So our next presenters are Fraser Bowie and Kyle Morrand, and their talk is on gamifying the operation with augmented reality.
Thank you for the enthusiasm. Come on. I know it's at the end of the day. Let's go. Woohoo. I'm Fraser Bowie with NuEyes Technology. We build AR headsets like this, and we're here to talk about gamifying the operating room.
And I'm Kyle Morrand from 302 Interactive. I've been doing game design for the real world for about a decade, really looking at how to take games and the game engine and then applying it to the real world in education, attractions, and healthcare as well. So today we're going to talk through what we've been working on the past, I think, like year now.
Yeah.
Around how we're going to try to gamify the operating room with augmented reality and what that's going to look like. So Fraser came and talked with me about a year ago. We've been working together for a few years on some AR solutions, which we'll talk about. But we started talking about operating room and this phrase, surgical navigation. And surgical navigation, what it kind of breaks down into is how a doctor is navigating through a surgical procedure, looking at their information, their monitors, the different metrics that they need to complete a surgery successfully. And really, as we started talking through what does that process look like, what does it look like to get into a surgical navigation environment, it starts to look really messy. It starts to get into a place where you've got different monitors, different information, you've got multiple doctors trying to communicate with one another, and they're all using different displays, different information to really work together to accomplish their goal. And as we talked through this and we started talking with different doctors and surgeons about this process and some of the pain points that they've been having, it really, to me, looked like this from their perspective of this kind of crazy room where you've got all this technology, what I would say is like a mess of technology that's trying to collaborate together to help them get through this surgery and really make sure that they don't lose the life that they're being trusted with. And as we went through that kind of discovery process and, like we said, learned from different doctors and surgeons what's been effective, what's not effective, why is this going into this room such like a stark challenge. To me, as a game designer, it really feels like this. It feels like you're looking at this kind of mess of information, and if you're not an expert, if you don't know what you're doing, if you're not ready and you're prepared to get through this, you're going to potentially make mistakes, you're going to have a big challenge, you're overloaded with information, and really wanting to not make a mistake. It's not a game when you're working with a patient in this way. And so what we've been talking through is how do you look at this challenge from old school 80s game design and start to look at it as how do we get to games to a more simplified experience, how games today are using information and complex information, providing you vast worlds and simplifying it for a player that's never played in that experience before and making sure that they don't fail. As a game designer, games are excellent at this. There's been years and years of practice of how to design experiences and utilize simple but effective visual cues and information to really hone down into letting your user know what they need to be doing. So in game design, we look at, in this bottom right here, what we call non-diegetic. That would be what I would call that original picture, where you've got information, it's displayed to you, but it doesn't mean anything to you. It's not spatial, it's not in the environment, it's not providing you this meta information, and it doesn't really apply to the world that you're in. And this is how, in that surgical operating room today, a lot of that information feels. It's a lot of different vital information, but it's not in the place that you need that information to be. It's displayed on different monitors. Different doctors have to gather different information and communicate with one another. And it really just creates this messy environment that it doesn't necessarily need to be. So from Fraser's perspective, the question became, how do we bring game user experience? How do we take this modern user experience practice of diegetic game and spatial game UI and bring that into healthcare and bring that into the operating room in an effective way? So.
Yeah, so first it starts with hardware because we need them to do that. So, you know, we at NuEyes started actually as a low vision assistive technology company. We do that today. We help those with that are considered legally blind see through using AR and VR technology. And we've played in the medical space with ultrasound and bringing these AR glasses together. And so from there, we started to really understand, you know, from our board of advisors that a lot of surgeons and doctors what their challenges were in the OR. So while we're giving NuEyes to perhaps someone that's legally blind or somebody working in the enterprise to help them do their job, we decided to look at how do we solve the problem the doctors are seeing. So traditional loupes, here's a shot of traditional loupes. The modern loupe was invented in the 1800s. It's a fixed magnification, 2 telescopes that somebody wears to magnify the stuff they're working on within, you know, let's say 18, 24-inch distance from what they're working on. And this is what they use in surgery. So what we looked at was how do we take that and digitize it, right? As Kyle was saying, with all this information they have to consume, they're consuming it from all different places throughout the OR because the loupes they're using are analog. So we've digitized them, and in a form factor like this is where we're going later this year. And it's using 2 RGB cameras, so we're giving them that stereoscopic and that depth of field. And we're really working with them to really understand what the surgeons, the dentists, the practitioners need from an ergonomic perspective. And so one of the big key things was first we needed depth of field, but they are hunched over today. So you saw those loupes, they usually come out of here, the traditional loupes, and so they have to look down to where they're at. We've actually created a pivoting camera so that they can stand up straight and look down and still get that same view of what they're working on. The magnification in traditional loupes are fixed magnification, 2, 3, 5x. We're doing from about 2.5 to 10x in a single pair of loupes, just by being able to use that digital magnification of the 2 cameras. And then stereoscopic, which is very important, right? We need to understand where the tissue is in relationship to the tool, or where you know, the vein or things are within relationship to the tools. So we're providing stereoscopic imaging, giving you that depth of field to under 1 millimeter, which is beyond the human eye in its natural form.
Yeah, if you've ever used like pass-through AR goggles with like a VR headset and try to grab like a coffee cup, it feels like a little awkward when you're trying to like reach out and grab that. That's what the stereoscopic solves. It really gives you that proper sense of depth, but then getting to a close millimeter accuracy with it.
Right. And so then taking that, we now have digital displays. Not only can we start adding in things like CT scans and X-rays and bringing that needed information in the moment of time, but we can also look at what we're doing traditionally, which is, you know, doctors may be drawing or marking out on the patient with a marker. Well, now, given the information we're capturing from the cameras and the sensors that we have on it, we can start overlaying those things, giving them precision navigation of where the incision needs to go. And then, you know, think about it from a gaming perspective. If you're aiming a gun at something, you go green when you've got that target locked in, or when you're building something in games and it needs to be at a certain angle, it goes green once it's in the right angle. So we can take those things that we're doing in gaming and bring them to surgery to make it easier for the surgeon to understand the procedure, updates to the procedure, new surgeons that are doing it for the first time, really giving them that accuracy of what they need to do, all because we've taken an analog loop and brought it to digital, into a digital form.
And I think also with the digital form, one of the design goals is really try to get all of that information from the displays, from the monitors, from all the different sensors in the environment, and make sure that we're giving the doctors that information only when they need it. So not overloading them with information. If we can get down to a stable environment where this is all a surgeon is seeing on the right, and they can focus on what they need to get done. If they need information, they can call that information online and bring that up into their heads-up display. But otherwise, we really want to get down to, can we just have a surgery room that just shows this, and they can focus on their job accordingly?
And the other great thing about it is because we're capturing this in 3D and we're bringing this in, now all of a sudden that expertise that you may need from somebody outside the surgical room, if they can see it, not just the live feed, but also see it in 3 dimensions, they understand that somebody may need to get a millimeter closer or a millimeter further away. They understand just more of the actual environment. So even from a live surgery procedure or even a recorded surgery procedure and going back and using it for training, you're really getting a much more immersive and in-depth feeling to the surgery itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think our last note here, and this is kind of a call to the audience and anybody that you guys know, we're in early days of building this ecosystem out. We, as Fraser mentioned, been focused more on the consumer side of helping patients with their experience. And now as we bring this into the operating room, we're really looking for designers, developers, and doctors that can come to this ecosystem and help shape this with us and help us make sure that we're doing this in the right way, that it's an effective procedure, and that we can reach our design goal that we're looking to hit. And Fraser's the kilt guy. If you don't see his kilt, it's lovely. And so he's gonna be here all week with a couple demos that you guys can come check out as well. But we're really open to questions and thoughts that you guys have, so thank you very much.
Yeah.
Anyone with questions can come to the podium.
And the key thing I want to say is doctors, right? So this was not developed in a room because we had a cool idea, right? We learned from, as we were building this out, we started building it out because we saw and heard challenges they were having in the OR. And that's where we started getting involved and started building this out. So, initially the journey started with just a single camera. And then they asked for depth of field. Then they asked for this. So really making sure that we understand the reason we're calling for designers, developers, and doctors is we understand that we understand the technology and we can see where the technology can assist in the challenges that may be there, but we want to understand the challenges and know that others out there have that knowledge to help us build an even better system.
Hi, great talk. Very interesting stuff. In terms of you talked about indicating the line and stuff. How do you plan on integrating with it with tracking?
So the information we're capturing through the RGB cameras itself, right? We're capturing it from 2 different angles, so we're already understanding that and understanding, freckles on the body or blemishes, that sort of thing. And then we're also adding in depth sensors as well, so we understand the distance of where the doctor is and that sort of thing, and just using all that information to compile the situation in front of you. And then what we've done in some of our tests or some of our discovery has been, can we take something like a CAT scan pre-op and really understand and do some planning on that? Right. And then in the operating room, instead of doing another CAT scan once the patient is there, maybe we only need 2 x-rays, and then we start mapping not only for what we can see, but also what we might not be able to see, and really give that precision, incision point or angles, that sort of thing.
Right, yeah, so that was my next question. Basically, the contours of the CT scan versus the skin. you would use that?
Yeah, CT scan versus the contours of the CT scan versus the skin, but also doing a couple of X-rays at different angles within the operating room once the patient is there.
Right.
We can then take that CT scan that we might have done a week ago and planned on, and then start mapping points so we know exactly where, let's say, the spine is, so we know where the incision goes in and that sort of thing.
But at this point, you also need to know what angle the X-rays were taken from, right?
Right, correct.
So
Right.
now you're integrating it with their systems.
Right, integrating with the X-rays to really understand that. Yep.
Yeah, they have these 3D DICOM files that capture all that metadata, also how the angles were actually captured and be able to reutilize that. So we would be integrating into their system to be able to get that information.
Great, thanks. I'll find you later.
Yeah.
We can talk about DICOM.
Yep.
Yeah. Any other questions? Cool.
All right, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Fraser and Kyle.
Thank you.
Thank you.